Last week, we had a conversation about getting on podcasts, knowing that podcasts are everywhere. And it seems like a limitless amount of ways that you can get out there and tell your story, and you can get some exposure for your company, your brand, your personal activity, whatever it might be. But maybe you want to do more than just be a guest on people's podcasts. Maybe you've got that thing inside of you that's like, I kind of want to have my own show. Or maybe you've started a show and realized how hard running a podcast can actually be. So this is really part 2 of what we did last week, where we talked with Mary Chan. This week, we're talking with Richie Burke of Gogetters Media about the ins and outs of podcasting. All of this is happening on Small Business Rally Point. This is a weekly conversation exclusively for small business owners inside the Idea Collective. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach, your host. We are sponsored, of course, by our friends at Bank 59, Serendipity Labs, and Kwik. So today we're going to kind of talk about what it takes to have your own podcast, and it will generate a bunch of questions. So we definitely want you to use the chat function with your questions, comments, and sarcastic remarks, because that's what makes it fun. So join us in the chat and be a part of our conversation with Richie Burke of Gogetters Media. Richie, great to see you, my friend. How are you today, man?
Now I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. And you're calling us from the studio. It looks like you're inside the studio as we speak.
I'm right here. Yes.
I love it. Well, I think a lot of people know you from the podcast that you host, and that's how people get introduced to you. But I definitely want to make sure people know the scope of what you do. So it's not just a podcast. Tell us about Gogetters.
The company Go Get It Marketing and Media, GGMM, our site's ggmm.io. So podcasting is probably about 90% of what we're known for. It makes up about 35-40% of our revenue. We also do brand strategy and a lot of video work, digital advertising, websites for a wide range of companies, a decent amount of small businesses. And then we also do some work for like Komatsu, Johnson Controls, Line and Kugels, and a number of other brands out there.
And that's amazing. And the podcast has been a part of that success. Can you talk about how the show, tell us what the show is, and then kind of give us an idea on how the show helped the company and vice versa?
Yeah, for sure. So the show's it's a Milwaukee-based podcast. We've covered anything from business leader interviews to athletes, musicians, topics on race. We did some dating advice episodes after I put one out as a joke, and it took off pretty well. And then that spiraled into something else. But we've done about, I think, 170 episodes to date, starting in 2016. Since we started tracking analytics properly in 2019, it's gotten over 200,000 downloads, and it's done relatively well. It's not a mega podcast, but as far as a local show goes, it's done well, and it's really helped grow our business. I started it back in 2016. I just didn't see many people doing it in Milwaukee, and I saw what some people were doing on a national scale, and I was like, okay, I could be that guy here and use this as a tool to selfishly help my business stand out, gain brand exposure. And it's kind of a crack sales and networking play, because you can really invite anyone on your show, and all of a sudden you're providing value to them and building that relationship and helping promote and get exposure on them. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had like a recorder in a wide open space, and we were shooting Facebook videos off a camcorder back when Facebook had pretty high organic reach. And it took off, even though the quality was not great, and I was pretty nervous and didn't really know what I was doing as a host at the time, but got a good response. And I just kept growing that and upgraded equipment, things like that, and figured out how to actually record a good podcast and create good video content, and saw what it did for our business. It really helped my small marketing agency grow. And then we started offering it to brands in 2018. And I thought that was going to blow up right away, because I thought, oh, if this is what it did for my smaller agency, larger companies and every company should be doing this. And then I launched that, and I don't think we had a customer for 6 months or so. And you always think something's going to blow up when you launch it, and that's usually it takes a lot more time, sweat, and money to actually get it off the ground. And then on Milwaukee, they were our first customer, and we still produce shows for them, and we've got to do Trek Bicycles podcast, and now doing something for Line and Kugels and Johnson Controls and MSOE and Marquette, and one high profile athlete in the area. I think I'll be able to announce that in a month or so, which is exciting.
Nice.
spiraled in. It's opened a lot of doors for us. It's gotten a lot of exposure, and we can track well over 1 million in direct sales to the podcast over that span, which is a good chunk for, you know, a small business like ours.
And I think that speaks to the overall effect of a podcast, is that you didn't sell $1 million worth of advertising. You sold $1 million through having a podcast. There are a lot of ways that you can make it grow. So great brand exposure, a tool to get people interested, a stage you can put people on. This sounds great. The question is having a podcast easy?
No, I mean, it's time consuming. I think you have to have a desire to want to do it, which I did. I think setting realistic expectations is important too. I think the most recent data is like the average podcast gets 27 downloads in its first 7 days or something like that. I think it used to be 140 in its first 30 days. And there's a good long tail on podcasts, but I think some people go in with unrealistic expectations. I think it can still be a great tool to grow your business. You can get in front of the right people. If you have a good following and a good customer base already built in, then, you know, that definitely helps a lot. And it's a very sticky medium. The average listen time on a podcast is about 80%. I'm a fan of Facebook video as marketing tools, but I think the average watch time is 4% on those. So even if I put out an episode and it gets 1,000 downloads, or let's just say just 100, which would be below average overall, you're still in people's ears for, let's say, a 30-minute episode. Average listen time is 24 minutes. So I think that's 2,400 minutes right there. And that can be a pretty intimate way to grow a relationship with your audience. And that's hard to hold people's attention in 2021, heading into 2022 soon. So podcasting, it's a very powerful medium. It's pretty mainstream now. Is it easy to grow a show from scratch today? Not really, but it can be done. And there's a lot of benefits that go along with it, especially if it's done right. And especially if you're a business owner with a built-in customer base, built-in network, I think it can be a valuable tool.
I think that's a good place to start the conversation then, because the show is called The Ins and Outs of Podcasting. So last week it was getting on other people's shows. Now we started this conversation with how valuable it can be once you get one up and running. But if I'm sitting here today thinking, yeah, I kind of have the desire, I do want to have a podcast, where would you recommend someone start in building their own show?
So I'm not good on the technical end. I have people on my team that are, luckily, so I won't dive into any of that. If anyone is curious on that, I can help them find resources. But as far as where to start from a content perspective, I think it's with a lot of marketing. I think starting as narrow as possible, especially today with all the content that's out there. If you have a built-in audience already or built-in customers, what are they asking? What questions are they asking? How can you add value to that audience? Or if it's just some other topic that you want to dive into, but how can you really separate yourself in 2020? What do you bring to the table? What's unique about it? And really, how can you add value to your audience? Or how can you do something that no one else is doing right now? Like when I started my show in 2016, it's kind of broad. As I said at the beginning, it's a number of topics, but no one was really doing it at that point in time here in the Milwaukee market. So I got away with that and was able to get some media partnerships and grow that relatively quickly.
Let's talk about how specific you're talking. Can you think of a successful podcast that is really narrow yet big enough to have an impact? I'm trying to find some shows that you can put out there as, this might sound really narrow, but it's really working for that podcaster.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of them. I mean, locally, we work with some financial services companies, and some of their episodes, they'll get a few hundred downloads, but they're bringing a couple different business owners, some of their clients and their potential clients into the conversation. They're building that relationship. And then even though it's only a couple hundred downloads, they're good people, and that can be meaningful, and they're kind of niche topics that are really going to add value to their audience. So that's an example of, I think, how small businesses are doing it well. Like I listen to some niche, whatever.
Niche. It's niche on this show. Niche.
Digital marketing type podcasts, and podcasts they function like Google. I mean, people are searching topics on the podcast app. So if something's diving really deep into Facebook ads and I want to learn about that, you know, I can learn about that. There's Marketing School, Digital Marketer puts one on. Those are relatively larger podcasts, but you know, they're very, very narrow and granular topics. There's a lot of shows on, hey, I want to interview people about success or about this or whatever. And it's a lot of the same people making the same rounds. And that's hard to stand out. And even with my show, we've had some big names on, and usually the topic episodes outperform just the one-on-one interview episodes because there's so many out there. And whenever you can latch on to a topic that is hot in the media at that point in time and put your own twist on it, so it kind of newsjacking, news stations have done a good job of that forever, and that's why people tune in. Those tend to perform pretty well. So last year, like when everything happened in Kenosha, we did an episode on that and had some local leaders on about that. We were doing them on BLM. During COVID last year, I would just basically sit where I am now on Friday afternoon and have 8 different business owners from Milwaukee call in and talk about what they were going through and how their business was responding and stuff like that. So those are just some examples of like finding out what's going on right now, what people are really interested in, and how you can put your unique twist on that and get it out into the marketplace.
I love the idea of being narrow. I love the idea of being unique. I love the idea of newsjacking, which is a term I've heard before. In case someone's not familiar, can you talk about how that works and how it relates to picking topics for your podcast?
Yeah, so I mean, newsjacking this morning would be, I mean, talking about the Packer game or the Browns game for people like you, Pat. But I'm just kidding, you don't want to hear about that at all.
No more. Stop hitting me. Stop.
But no, that or the Ryder Cup when it has to do with sports or what you know, whatever the political landscape is going on right now. We did a bunch of episodes around the election that performed well. So I think whatever people are kind of fired up about and passionate about, and how you can inject something into that. Even with we do some work with Johnson Financial, and they come on our show sometimes, and they did one on like you know, what's Biden's tax plan going to do for you? Not the sexiest topic, but it performed extremely well because it's something that everyone's interested in how it's going to affect them, and people get fired up about that kind of thing. So it's kind of finding those angles of like what's trending right now and how it's going to affect your audience and going from there. And that's not just podcasting. If you're going to create any video content or blogs or things like that, you don't need to have a podcast to do that.
And I think I want to hit on one more thing before we get off the topic selection idea. Talmar has a question. As far as topics, is it better to go salacious or educational, more entertaining or actionable, more positive or negative? What have you kind of experienced as you selected the right topic?
What does salacious mean? I'm sorry.
Like racy, like, you know, on the edge, kind of.
Yeah, I think the more you can stack those different things, the better you're going to be. I think obviously the racier or the edgier podcasts are going to perform well. They're unique. The taboo topics that not a lot of people talk about, they help you stand out. Obviously, you need to be true to yourself. I mean, Call Her Daddy, which just got acquired, I think for $60 million on a deal with Spotify. Very, very, very racy, very, very kind of graphic, also very humorous. Like she was very good, and she's at what she did, and she stacked all those elements, and she was very successful. And then Joe Rogan obviously had $100 million deal, and he's not like that, but you know, people aren't afraid to talk about those kind of things that the mainstream media is going to shy away from. And something I try and do as a host too is, have those conversations. When I was doing episodes just on race last year, it wasn't the most comfortable thing for a white male to dive in and talk about those topics. I thought it was important, but we went there. Or with the dating advice to Milwaukee men, I had this matchmaker on, and like no one was doing any podcasts on that, and she was funny, so I just mic'd her up in the studio and was fans submitting questions from my single friends who didn't actually submit them, and it ended up being pretty funny, and I was calling them out, and then that got a good response. So we had Miss Wisconsin and Miss Milwaukee come on after that, and we had like a series, and Kessler sponsored it, and like that was funny. But anyway, I try and stack kind of what's hot in the news right now. I try and stack humor if something's on the edge. I don't do anything that's really outside of my personality, but I think or try and just go out there to get attention. I see a lot of people doing that in the media where they're just kind of off the walls to get a headline. I'm not a big fan of that. But yeah, the more you can stack those different elements all into one, the better off you're going to be.
So a question from Mitch, who is asking about equipment. You kind of mentioned that you're not the equipment expert, but you have people that could maybe answer a specific
absolutely.
equipment question. But the second part of his question, he's asking about what are the pros and cons of using a professional company, like going someplace to have your podcast recorded. So there can be some great pros of doing that. Or should you dive in and make the investment on your own gear? What has your experience been like?
So I've always had people on my staff that can do it. Obviously, we produce podcasts for companies as well. So I'm one of those companies that you could go to. I think the pros are it's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to get done at a high level. The audio is going to be great, and you're going to get a good advisor and partner with you. The con is going to be money. As always, I mean, you could do it yourself. You could bootstrap it. You could buy the equipment. You could edit it. You could you could find a freelancer to edit it as well, which would be kind of a hybrid of doing it yourself or going with a company like me who's done it before. So I think those are the main pros and cons.
Okay. If someone wants to know more, you have a course? Do you have some information on this? I know that you teach people how to do it as opposed to just hiring your company, which is another thing that can be done. But can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we some companies pay us and we'll just do everything for them. We also launched the Pod Playbook last year, which it's about 10 hours of video content and a 30-page workbook, and we have a Facebook group, which is not active right now, but the modules are still there and the workbook's still there. It's called the Pod Playbook. I believe it's still on our website. I can link it in the comments too. And if anyone's interested in that, just let me know. Happy to work something out. But that's a great resource. And if you're going to do it yourself, I'd highly recommend that. It goes through everything from naming to show planning to how we structure episodes, how to tell a good story, host advice, and all the marketing plans on kind of how we launch a podcast, how we roll content out, how to do a launch contest, and really use podcasting to create a marketing engine for your business.
That sounds great. And JB found the link from your website, so she's put it inside the chat. Okay. So way to go, JB.
Sounds good.
And speaking of the retreat, you're speaking at the retreat. So we're talking about content that converts. Can you give us a sneak preview of what you're going to hit at on stage?
I've been very busy. I haven't started the presentation yet, but it will be kind of, as you were saying, content that converts. So really just helping small business owners do better online through content. I'll definitely dive into sales funnels and paid advertising and how to make good offers online to convert people. A lot of people have websites, but a lot of companies, they don't really do anything for them. And some small businesses, I think, do have an advantage to build a good funnel and a good content engine, and it's not that overcomplicated. So I'll be going over some examples. I'll be going over what we see working right now, kind of across the board, and just common themes. So there's actionable takeaways that everyone will be able to apply to their business.
Yeah, I love that. I can't wait to see you Saturday morning.
It won't just be kind of like high level theory. We also won't have a ton of time to just like get super into the weeds, since it'll only be 20 minutes, but there will definitely be some good actionable steps that I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of that they can get from that.
I have a feeling we're going to make you edit quite a bit. You're going to have to iterate and iterate to get this down to 20 minutes because you got so much you're going to share.
Working on it. I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be a great weekend. Richie Burke, Gogetters Media, thank you so much for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other questions, or do you want?
Well, yeah. If there are more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll work them back in with Richie after the show. So, Richie, thanks for coming on. We're going to move on to the next part of the show, and that's our next speaker / sponsor from the Idea Collective Retreat, the one, the only, thank goodness for the planet, there's only one.
Or help everybody.
Talmar Anderson from Boss Actions. Howdy, Talmar. How are you today?
Hi, Pat. Hi, everybody. So glad to be here with everyone today.
Well, we are talking about the retreat. We're talking about Boss Actions. Are you getting excited to come yet? Come on now. We're 40 days away.
So excited. Yeah, seriously. So excited. Any excuse to go to Wisconsin for me is a good one. I'm not based in Wisconsin, so that's always a good time. My team and I are starting to plan exactly what we're doing and how we're getting out there. I'm dragging my husband along because he's a business owner. And yeah, I'm very excited about this retreat. I mean, just the multiple layers, the multiple speakers, an opportunity to collaborate and connect. I am ready to be in the room. Let's do this.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about what you're going to talk about first, but I also want to talk about Boss Actions, your company. So let's first talk about your presentation. So
Absolutely.
we have all day Friday, we're going to gather and connect with one another. All day Saturday, we're going to hear brilliant presentations like the one from Richie. You are going to talk on Sunday during the goal setting workshop. So what are you going to talk about to get people ready to set their goals for 2022?
Well, if Sunday is all about setting goals, I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a 3-part section where we're going to really set everyone that's attending up to get the most out of their goal setting. We all have general ideas about what we need to go through, but myself and 2 other presenters, we're each getting a little specific, really granular, which I really love, because my section is on how to identify, how to get clear on what that goal is, right? It's how do I look at all the massive opportunities? How do I look at all the things I want, all the possibilities, and really get clear and identify what I need to be moving towards? And finding clarity is my favorite thing to speak on. So I'm looking forward to it.
And that sounds simple, but it's not simple. There are a lot of paths we can walk. Give us an overview. How do we pick which one's right for us?
It's a big conversation. So 20 minutes, yeah, a challenge, but I'm up to it. I think that we have a tendency to try to do too many. And so for me, identification usually starts with really starting with the list and then just starting to cut things out. Cut out the things that are expected of you. Because how many of us identify goals that really are to please somebody else, right? How many of us identify goals that are shoulds? I really should work out, just so we're clear. That one goes off my list. Don't tell everybody. But there's ways to get clear on what you truly want and need to move your business forward, to know, to reach that goal. And a lot of it's tapping into why you want that result. And then priority. We just can't do it all. So let's decide what we're going to do first.
Well, I know it's going to be entertaining as heck. I'd love to hear you speak because you get so fired up, powered by Maker's Mark. It's a beautiful thing.
Lord, that would be a lot.
Yeah. But let's talk about Boss Actions. I mean, when people are trying to scale their business and they start bringing in people so they can go faster and further, sometimes people problems pop up. And is that where Boss Actions comes in?
100%. The people side of business. That's the part that can really keep a company stuck, keep business owners stuck. That fear of, I have to, I want to be nice. Can't we all I just want everybody to just want to do their job. And I really hope they'll figure it out. Hope is not a strategy, people, but if you need a strategy or process, that's where Boss Action comes in. And we help business owners and their leadership team really step into that clarity. Again, identify what their business needs, because it's not about walking through a manual that says this is how Talmar did it. It's your business needs different employees than mine. And a business owner will be best served if they learn how to develop their own skills for hiring the best possible team for them, their business, and their clients, and then really holding them accountable without being this overbearing ogre. You don't have to be mean to get results from your team, but you do have to have clarity.
And that strategy is something that I think is super unique. I hope every solopreneur on the call ends up having a conversation like that with you so they can figure out who to hire and what roles to fill, because you do the strategy, not the recruiting, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we are not the recruiter. And I would tell you, as much as it sounds like it's a solopreneur issue, a lot of people who are calling themselves solopreneurs are actually already a boss. If you have hired or engaged with anyone, an independent contractor, a vendor, or an employee, you already have a team. And as so often happens, you get the term boss before you're really aware of what that entails.
Yeah.
So I usually walk in at that time, right when they're overwhelmed, whether they might have 3 independent contractors or 15, or they're just thinking about their first hire. When they're really ready to get clear on how to make that easier and faster and get the results they need from those people, that's where Boss Action comes in.
I'm afraid the people that I work with don't call me boss. I think they have other words that they call me, but I'm not quite sure what they are.
And, I got a lot of flack for naming my company Boss to Richie's point about saying something that's a little controversial. I had a lot of people take me aside and go, boss isn't a great word. And I disagree. I think boss is just as recognized as something that's awesome. It's a boss car, it's a boss outfit. Boss can be what it is. And I'm taking boss back, and I'm encouraging business owners to step into that, because a boss can be everything it needs to be, as long as they are providing the tools so the team can be successful. A boss is not about sitting back and lording over people. It's about turning that service onto the team so they can get the success.
So we're going to connect with Talmar. We're going to connect with Richie and so many more at the Idea Collective retreat. Talmar, I can't wait to see you in November. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
Appreciate it. All right. So those two are going to be on stage with us. Also, Mel Robbins, live keynote, 75 minutes. She's going to do her 5-second rule, her new High Five Habits book that just came out, and then over an hour of Q&A with our guests, which is that's pretty kick-ass. I just got to be honest. It's going to be amazing. And also, we're getting some tremendous buzz for Jesse Cole, the owner of the Savannah Bananas, who's going to show up and rock your world. Then speakers all day. It's going to be incredible. Smallbizretreat.com is the website. Get a ticket before the retreat gets here, and we're launching a new bonus today. So if you don't have your ticket yet, we're launching for the first time ever our brand new small business owner hoodie. So if you're trying to get through your career and you're trying to grow your business, if you buy your ticket before October 11th, you will get the first copies of the new small business owner hoodie that we're just now releasing. It's a free gift. It's a bonus with purchase. So grab your ticket between now and October 11th, and you'll pick up one of these bad boys. On the sleeve here, I'm not sure if you can see it. It's got the Idea Collective logo, and it says, "Don't grow it alone," right here on the sleeve. So this is brand new. We're just now announcing it. If you get your ticket by the 11th, that is our gift with purchase, a big old bonus for you. Plus, you get to hang out with Talmar and be powered by Maker's Mark just like she is. So how could that be bad? All right. So thanks to Richie for coming on. Thank you to Talmar for coming on. Thank you for your questions, and those of you that tuned in on Facebook as well. As always, we are sponsored by Bank 59. If you'd like to get into the Idea Collective and hang out with us 24/7, 365, Bank 59 will get you in for free. Just become a small business banking partner with Bank 59, and you can get 12 months free in the group. It's bank59.com/Idea Collective. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. We will see you next Monday at 3 o'clock for another edition of Small Business Rally Point. See you next time.